aqui bogli, no?
Dr. Bharat, I think
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Vinod sir. Yes, sir. We can start, sir. We can start.
Okay. Fine.
Yes, sir. Welcome back for the second session of Dr. Vinod Mishra. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the patient listening that the honorable participants have provided to us, because you become a good speaker only when you have good listeners. Now we are going to resume from where we had left, and I could see in between that there were some of the queries which I hope will be answered in course of my talk. But at the same time, let me assure you that I am also ready to take questions towards the end. So I'm going to share now. No. This is a different one. Wait. This is the first one only. This one, no? Part 2. Yes. This is actually fine. Wait. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible. Sir, it is visible. Communicating across cultures.
Fine. Yeah. So in the first talk, we talked about the general things about culture and the role of culture in communication. Now, in this part of the lecture, we shall actually be talking about some of the queries that people have already raised in the chat box. And I'm happy that their queries have already been accommodated in this talk. Now, one of our friends had asked about what are the cultural contexts. My dear friends, the world is actually divided into two cultural contexts. I have been referring to it in the previous talk about the two cultures. One is a high context culture and the other is a low context culture. When people of the low context culture communicate with people of high culture context, there are times is created a situation where we either feel embarrassed or we feel uncomfortable. So the countries which fall in the line of high context culture are Japan, China, Arab, Greece, Mexico, and Spain. Now, people of high context culture, they are intuitive, meaning thereby when they communicate or when they do some action, they also actually think. They are intuitive by nature. They introspect. They are very contemplative. You can compare it with the Japanese style that when they communicate, they speak less, but they think. And when they sign an agreement, after some amount of thinking, they sign an agreement. And these people do not give much stress on words. Rather, they give stress on non-verbals. Now, what are these non-verbals? We can, at a certain point of time, have a complete talk on non-verbals. But here, let me tell you that these non-verbals include kinesics, proxemics, chronemics, haptics, meta communication. So now all these items of non-verbal are taken into consideration when we are communicating in a high context culture. They actually apply more meaning to non-verbals. They believe more in essence than in what they say. And meaning to physical and social setting is also very important. I mean, when any negotiation is to take place, even here in India also, you will find when we have something to take place, or when we are going to observe something grand. So that is visible only through the setting also. And when we talk about setting also includes time, venue, people, and then the decorations also. Whereas people of low context culture, they are logical. They actually believe only in the words, and they are analytical and action oriented. Now they will not come to any decision very soon. Whereas, as I said earlier, people of low context cultures, people of high context cultures, they will take time to decide. These people, I mean people of low context culture, will value individualism. Every individual is unique. Every individual has some capabilities. They will not go to generalize, and they will not have a sort of stereotyped impression about people, because that way they are going to create a sort of impediment, my dear friend. And these people actually take hasty decisions, low context people. So low context countries are Germany. As I said, Germans smile less. Fine, Germans smile less. The people of Scandinavia, North America, England, France, and Italy, they come under low context culture. Now, when it comes to solving a problem, because most of the time when we communicate with a purpose. The purpose may be at times to convince, the purpose may be at times to clarify, the purpose may be at times to sign a deal. But when there's a crisis, when there's a problem, and you are going to solve the problem. So again, here there lies a difference. Low context business people enjoy confrontation and debate. You will find, especially US citizens, US people, they believe more in confrontation and in debates. Whereas people of high context culture, they do not believe much in confrontation and debate. If they do not agree, they may sometimes try to distance themselves away or try to buy some time. High context people often avoid confrontation. Japanese, they will, not only Japanese, but even Chinese, Chinese also, they often use a third party for negotiation. They will, of course, they will meet, they will understand, they will realize, but when it comes to signing a document, they will always bring a third party. Low context people, they always are goal oriented. Their entire attention is focused on goal. They keep the relationship aside. Whereas people of high context culture, they believe that even if there is a business, they believe in starting with a sort of relationship. They believe in relationship communication, my dear friend. High context business people value long-term relationship. That is why when a contract is signed, they believe that this is intentional. That is only the beginning of our relationship. Yes, Japanese are high context culture people, my dear friends. You may all remember that when a doll was to be promoted in Japan, what happens is, in Japan, a public display of private emotions is considered bad. A public display of private emotions. So when a doll came to the market, the doll was banned because many of them said that the doll had got a toothy smile, my dear friend. They actually do not smile as other people smile. They do not want to sort it when they are smiling, because smiling in public is considered very bad and very impolite. I remember once upon a time when I had been for a conference in Osaka, one of the countries, one of the towns of Japan. I was landed into a problem, and the problem was that I forgot the way to my hotel. I was at a market square, and after I had done some amount of wandering and all, I forgot the way to my hotel. And you will find, my dear friends, that the Japanese, they are actually very strict in terms of their language. They always prefer to speak in Japanese and not in English. Every now and then I used to ask people, where is this hotel? And they will not speak anything. So finally, I landed myself into a problem. And then I thought that someone who is like a student may guide me. So suddenly there was a student like a girl. So I asked her again in English, but then she did not say anything. Then what I did was I brought out the brochure of the hotel, which was in my pocket, and I showed the brochure that this is my hotel. So even after showing the brochure, she did not react anything, and she went her own way. But then I stood still, and after some time, I think she had gone only a few meters, I mean a few yards rather. Then suddenly she looked back. And then I thought perhaps she wants me to follow. And then I started going behind. And after going for, say, 5 or 6 minutes, then suddenly she stopped near a building. And of course, this was the same hotel where I wanted to be there. And it was written Hotel Toyoko Inn. So what I actually got out of this is that they do not speak much, but then they are very cooperative people. And even though that student did not say anything, but she cooperated a lot. And finally, I was able to reach my hotel. So high context people, they actually value in non-words, and they do not believe much in words, my dear friend. Now, here is an impression and an observation by E.T. Hall. E.T. Hall. So Hall was a famous writer who has written quite a good number of books on culture. Edward T. Hall. So one of the books entitled Beyond Culture, where he says, high context cultures make greater distinction between insiders and outsiders than low context cultures do. People raised in high context systems expect more of others than do the participants in low context culture. Fine. So when talking about something they have on their minds, a high context individual will expect his interlocutor to know what is bothering him so that he does not have to be specific. The result is that he will talk around the point, in effect, putting all the pieces in place except the crucial one. Placing it properly, that is actually very important. Placing it properly, this keystone is the role of his interlocutor. Fine. So Edward T. Hall believes that high context cultures, they actually make a great distinction between insiders and outsiders. Now, as I have been saying, that when we communicate in a different culture, we actually have to be aware of certain contexts. The context may be international, the context may be trans-border, the context may be cross-cultural, and the context may be intercultural. So when we are communicating interculturally, either face-to-face or even while we are exchanging written documents between the two of us, we have actually to be very much conscious of certain beliefs, very much conscious of certain values. For example, superstitions are also a part of culture. Superstitions are also a part of your culture. If the culture that you belong to, you also might have felt that certain superstitions in your culture, they are more valuable. Of course, with the advance of science and technology, these superstitions are taking a back seat. But still, if we are thinking of our own identity, then sometimes or the other, we are also reminiscent of our superstitions. In Mexico, pulqueras is actually a saloon where people gather to drink pulque, a distillate of cactus, which is considered good fortune to get worms in your cup. Fine. But then in India, when something falls in our cup, we often do not drink it. But in Mexico, this is considered to be a sort of good fortune. In Japan, as you will find this maneko neko, that is a beckoning cat. Now in our country also, we have started realizing the same symbol being used at several places. That is how I said that cultures affect other cultures as well. In China, the phonetic sound of 8 is considered most fortuitous of numbers, which actually means prosperity. Whereas number 8, when we talk about number 8, it is considered fortunate. But when we talk about number 4, which is considered to be read as C in Hong Kong, and which actually is a homophone for death. That is why in Hong Kong you will not have a room number 4 in a hospital because people think it to be quite, unfortunate. A license plate with the number 8 is quite valuable. A license plate with the number 8 is considered quite valuable. That is why they will, most of the time, they will use number 8. Arabs of the same sex stand much closer than North Americans, and this may at times create confusions also. People of the same sex, they do not walk hand in hand with each other in some countries because they are considered to have a different sort of relationships with each other. That is why when we talk about distances and all, so the Arabs of the same sex stand much closer, which at times may be very uncomfortable to people of other cultures. So when we talk about the spatial distance or the proxemic differences, we will find that while distance between two people in conversation, distance between two people may be considered very close, the same distance may be considered to be very far. In US, people actually require more room. Even in business dealings, you will find the boss will occupy a room which is very large enough. Whereas in some countries, especially in Germany, the boss will sit in the center so that he can have a broad view of all other employees. In some countries, people actually sit in a corner so that he feels himself very important. In some countries, you will find people actually believe in making other people wait outside for long so that they can understand his dominance and they can understand his importance. Whereas to some people, it may not be unnerving. To some people, it may actually be very unnerving, my dear friends. Now, there are other cultural variables which also should be taken into consideration. And one such is ethnocentrism, that your culture, even in our own country, if we belong to one particular state, we believe that one culture believes that this is very important. I remember once upon a time while I was in one of the northern states of India, there people will always say, in Assamese, yeah, they were actually Assamese, so they will always say, Amar Sar, Amar Bondhu, fine. So they are actually more ethnocentric, and whenever something was done, they will actually think about. So this is not only in one corner, but in other corners as well. And they believe, at times you have also heard people say Desh. So this word Desh at times become very controversial. Some people only believe that one state is their Desh, whereas when we talk about Desh, it actually has a larger connotation. I mean, the entirety of a nation. When you talk about education, education can also be valuable than religious faiths, then country laws, as I have already talked about legal systems, then certain social modes and social mannerisms. In certain cultures, it is always considered appropriate that when you visit some person's house, you must go with a present. But remember, my dear friends, this is not approved in every culture. You can bring gifts to the children, but you cannot bring gifts to a man's wife, fine, because that is considered very impolite. I'm reminded of one such tradition where if you're going to meet a person in China, even on a birthday, and if you present him with a timepiece or a watch, it is actually considered inappropriate because that actually means that you are inviting evil for him. So presenting somebody a timepiece in China is considered inappropriate. Likewise, presenting somebody a red rose, especially in Germany, that is also considered inappropriate, my dear friend. Fine. So then it comes to language. Language also has differences, my dear friends. When we talk about language, what is of utmost importance is to say, that we at times start believing in a language of othering, whereas we should have a language of accommodating. Somebody has raised a question, what is unique about Indian culture? A language of accommodating, my dear friend, is unique about Indian culture. We are actually very tolerant, we are very accommodating, we are very inclusive, fine. So when I talk about language of othering, I'm reminded of some of the very beautiful lines of a famous Indian poet, Rudyard Kipling, in one of his poems entitled We and They. The lines are father, mother, and me, sister and aunties say, all the people like us are we, and everyone else is they. And everyone else is there. So when we start thinking about all this, that everyone else is there, this is actually a language of othering. Whereas in order to survive in a global world, in a multicultural world, we have to follow a culture which is to be assimilative, a culture which is inclusive, a culture which is accommodating. Then, of course, there are non-verbal cues, especially when we talk of space, time, ways of greeting, and touch. Apart from all that, there are certain social mannerisms also that are very important. Now, what social mannerism? Every culture will have certain social mannerisms to follow. In some cultures, especially where rigid laws are there, where rigid customs are there, women are still not given prominent positions. Women are still not given prominent positions. They are not a part of decision-making process. Of course, the world is changing because of the advanced wings of technology. And when it comes to offering courtesies and when it comes to addressing people, you will find again there is a cultural difference. We in India, we often call our elders with certain terms which are actually full of respect. We do not want to call somebody elder by name, whereas in US, people even address their top executives by their first name, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Such, fine, Mr. Such. But you know, my dear friends, in China, they address them by their designations. You all, those who are having English backgrounds may remember there's a beautiful book by Aravind Adiga, where he is writing letters to the Chinese premier. And every now and then he addresses it, dear premier. So in China, there is actually a custom of addressing people by their designations. Now, culture is such at times a confusing term that what appears to be polite in one culture may be impolite in another culture. For example, in US, it is quite common to ask a person, asking a person, how was your weekend? But in some cultures, it may be considered to be interfering with somebody's private life. You cannot ask somebody, how was your weekend? That actually means you are crossing the boundary, my dear friend. Fine? Now, giving gifts to a man's wife, as I said earlier, is considered to be very impolite in Arab countries, whereas you can give gifts to their children, but you cannot give gifts to a man's wife. In Germany, if you present even a lady and you are going for a business deal, and considering that providing somebody a red rose maybe in a way, because you know many of us are under the impression that if we provide somebody a gift, the work will be done. So if you provide a red rose to a woman in Germany, that will be considered inappropriate, and that means you are actually inviting for a romantic advance or a romantic favor. So we have to be quite particular about what sort of mannerisms are we follow. Of course, it is very difficult, but then with time, with patience, with tolerance, we can of course learn all these things. When we talk about some other non-verbals, what is of utmost importance is time and space. I have mentioned about a particular book entitled The Silent Language by Edward T. Hall. And there is one very beautiful line in the book where it says, time talks and space speaks. Now, when Hall says this, what actually he means is time talks. Time actually denotes how a person attaches importance to time. Time is money, as I said, time is money in US, but in Mexico, time is a bit flexible. Germans and Americans actually view time as limited. They understand that we have a limited time and you have to make more money. That is why at times working for more hours is considered better. Fine? Working for more hours is considered better. You remember there is a beautiful book, a play. There's a beautiful play, American play, you know, where the father works even when he is of a good age and the sons are not settled. It is a Miller's play. It is a Miller's play, fine. And the father always tries to see that his sons are settled, but the sons are not settled and the father works too much. And there is one line where he says, a small man is as exhaustive as a big man. And through that play, he tries to say that when you are young, you are actually to make a lot of fortune. So time is limited. Whereas Latin Americans and Asians, they are flexible in terms of time. If you do not mind, we at times, we Asians and especially Indians, we are actually very flexible in terms of time. We often see to it that we do not go timely to the meetings. Of course, this online thing has in a way converting ourselves to being in time. So timeliness is considered a very important ingredient of one's personality. People in Canada and US, they stand 5 feet apart. Fine. People in Canada and US, they stand 5 feet apart, which may be a very unpleasant and uncomfortable to people in the Arab. Fine. Germans and Japanese, they also consider it as uncomfortably close. They want more distance. Arabs and Latin Americans view it is uncomfortably far. That is why they actually want that they should be very close. In this connection, let me actually tell you about an incident which I have gathered from one book, where they believe in the policy of you and I are close friends. One professor who was invited to talk, and when the people came to receive him, two people came to receive him. They received him from the professor's front door to the door of the car, and the professor was made to sit in the rear seat, in the back seat, and there were two men who actually sat in the front seat. Throughout the travel, the professor kept on thinking, what was wrong with me? Do I have a bad smell? Am I not properly dressed? Or what is wrong with me that two people are sitting in the front seat despite the fact that there is enough space available on the back seat? But then he maintained silence and he did not speak. After some time, I mean, after some days or some months, again, the same group of people invited him for a talk. And this time there were more than two people. And the professor was very happy that this time they have no way out but to sit in the rear seat or the back seat. But again, the same thing happened, my dear friend. All the 3 or 4 people, they sat in the front seat. And when they reached the venue, the throughout professor kept thinking what was so wrong about me. And then he was reminded of one very famous fiction. And that famous fiction was, I am in awe of you, meaning thereby I respect you too much and I'm afraid of you. So this, and then when you are afraid of each other or when you provide more space to somebody, the meaning is that you and I are close friends. So especially Japanese people, they believe in this philosophy that others are to be given more space. Whereas those who believe that there is enough space, yet they are not able to see, then they will find that either there is some problem or the other. Now, one of the major ingredients of non-verbal being practiced during communication across cultures is one's body language. Fine. When you are having a communication with a person of different culture, you have actually to be aware of certain mannerisms, even certain body language. For example, running a hand backward across his head by an Arab, it indicates actually romantic interest. So one has to be very careful that one does not run a hand backward across his head while, and especially in case he is having a communication with a female member, that is again going to be very difficult. In addition, exposing the sole of one's shoe is a sign of insult, which you know the Egyptians often consider that if somebody exposes the sole of the shoe, that is actually insulting. Calling somebody by pointing index finger is considered rude by high context cultures. Now, of course, we cannot talk of handshakes in the present juncture, but a proper handshake in Spain lasts for at least 5 to 7 strokes, whereas in France it is only 1 stroke. You will often find that you also may have some friends who, when they handshake, they continue to have your hand in his hand for quite a long time. This may at times make us very uncomfortable and have some unpleasant feelings also. So we have to be very much aware of all these things while we are having a communication across cultures. Moreover, it is also seen that when we communicate across cultures, there are some other gestures of body language which are having negative connotations. For example, when you display thumbs up gesture, thumbs up gestures, you actually mean to say correct, but in Sardinia and Greece, it actually means get stuffed. While saying okay or having the indication of okay symbolizes zero in France, it may be money in Japan. And when you are waving goodbye, US people often understand it as come here. So when you are calling somebody, it is also seen that you cannot point fingers, and especially the index finger. By making use of your index finger, if you are calling somebody, it is again a sort of insult, my dear friend. The symbol V, which is a symbol of victory and peace in US, may also have a negative connotation. So while making use of it, you also have to see in which cultural context you are using. Otherwise, it may create a lot of problems, my dear friends. Now, the forms of greeting, as I said, forms of greeting are also different in different countries. You know, all over the world, you know, there is a common greeting form, which is by folding your hands, and which we are proud of. We say it namaste. This namaste actually works better. Fine. I remember while in Japan, while trying to find out one good hotel where to have my dinner, finally I landed into an Indian hotel, which symbol was already pasted outside, and the symbol was of namaste. And when I entered, one of the person said namaste. So that actually gives you at times a feeling of belongingness also. But then there are other symbols all over the world. For example, Y symbol. Y is a form of greeting, and this is just like namaste. There is then hongi symbol in Maori Island. This hongi symbol actually is one gesture where two people meeting each other, they actually press their noses with each other, and they show their breath, and this is one form of greeting. Now, when we talk about other elements of cultural differences, it is also language and semantics. Now, language and semantics, for example, when you are writing something, you know, when you are writing a letter, even if a business letter in Japan, they talk more about weather in the beginning and then they come to the point. Whereas in certain cultures, especially in US, you will find that they actually straightway come to the point. They straightway come to the point. When talking about the patterns or the grammatical patterns that we are maintaining, the grammatical or the syntactic structure. So syntactic structure also we will find, sorry. I hope I'm audible. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
No problem, because some of them say voice is not clear, something like that.
No, sir. I think it's audible, sir.
Okay, it's fine, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So when we talk about the structure, especially when we talk about the structure, you will find that the pattern of a sentence usually we follow in English: subject, verb, object. Whereas this is followed in Japanese in a different manner. SOV, subject, object, and verb. That is actually the pattern. Likewise, in Arabic and Welsh, VSO, verb comes first, then subject, and then object. VOS and VOS is followed in Mayan language. Next to that, we also find that when you are communicating culturally, at times there are problems of translation, my dear friend, problems of translation, because we are under the impression that when we say anything, we are translating it verbatim. And this verbatim translation at times causes problems. They at times create problems, my dear friend. Fine. For example, now have a look at this sentence. This was actually a sentence which was to be spoken in Japan. And for that, when the translation was made by a Japanese, and this real sentence was, we wonder if you would prepare an agenda for our meeting. We wonder if you would prepare an agenda for our meeting. Now the word wonder, especially Japanese, they actually translated it as gimon. Gimon actually means doubt. Now see how the interpretation will change. Now the real meaning will be, I doubt if you would prepare an agenda for our meeting. Like that, there are certain phrases that we use, even in Indian context also. In Indian context also, there is actually a tendency of people translating verbatim. For example, I'm reminded of one line from Mulkraj Anand's one of the books, where somebody says, honor my salt. The talk is between an Indian peasant and this Indian peasant says to the British official, please honor my salt. Please honor my salt. And the British person does not understand, and then he reacts differently. Fine. So the meaning changes, because what in Indian context is honoring one's salt is to respect, whereas he says, you have betrayed my salt. Fine. So, and then again, one phrasal expression, the old man kicked the bucket. That is actually a very common. That actually means the old man died. But if it is to be translated verbatim, it means, how can an old man have this much of power and physical strength that he will kick the bucket? Now, sometimes or the other, this translation creates humor also. I'll also come up with some examples. For example, one that I have taken from Axtel's book, where the famous President Jimmy Carter, when Jimmy Carter was to give a talk to those people in their country in Poland, and these lines were translated like this. The president says he's pleased to be here in Poland, grasping your secret parts. Actually, now if it has been translated like this, it will have a different meaning. Hence, we are to be very aware. Moreover, when we go for the advertisements all over the world, they create a lot of problems, my dear friend. In India, of course, we switch over to Hindi, we switch over to some other regional languages at times. But in certain cultures where they actually want to be at par with other people who speak English, sometimes, they actually translate it in such a manner that it cannot keep us away from laughing. For example, let us have a look at this. This is actually the menu of a Swiss restaurant. Our wines leave you nothing to hope for. Now look at the meaning of this sentence. Actually, the intended message was not like that. In one of the hotels about water, what they had written, the manager himself has passed all the water. The manager himself has passed all the water. Now, what was to be said has actually been different, and the meaning has changed. Again, in Hong Kong, let us have a look at a dentist advertisement. Teeth extracted by the latest Methodists. And what will make you laugh more is about a Copenhagen airline office. We take your bags and send them in all directions. Actually, what they want to say is that whatever direction you want, we want to send. But then the way they have translated it as in all the directions means that you are not sure whether it will be sent to your direction or not. Now, my dear friends, there are several ways also to say no To say yes, we have already discussed. When somebody says yes in one culture, that exactly does not mean saying yes or being agreeable. But then in India also, when saying no, in some states, saying no is reflected in a different manner. Likewise, in US and Canada, shaking your heads back and forth, that is to say no. In Bulgaria, you actually nod up and down to say no. In Japan, you only move your right hands. And in Sicily, you raise your chin. So these are all the ways of saying no. Now, next is language use that we were talking of, and what to take, what steps to take. When you are writing or you are speaking in a different culture, see to it that the words that you choose, the words have to be neutral. Because we have already been saying that words do not have meanings. It is actually the user who provides meaning to words. So we have to write in a language that is reader-centered, reader-centric, fine. And we also have to see that we maintain this cultural sensibility. One word may have more than 32 meanings, my dear friends. And you never know which meaning will be taken into consideration by a person. Every now and then people are not sitting with the thesaurus or the dictionary. And it is always better to provide them a clear and candid expression. And for that, what is needed is the use of short and clear messages. Even for all of us, it is always better that we make a choice of using short and clear messages. And not only short sentences, but short paragraphs also. Especially we have found that even in our own country, when somebody writes an article or a paper, at times these papers are returned with the comments that the use of English is faulty. In one of the papers that somebody brought to me, the comment was written, how many times have you made use of the article the on every page? Now, these are some of the things that we have to take into consideration. And moreover, we also are to be aware of the local use of language. Now, what happens? Even in our own country, several different states have different pronunciation styles. And what happens is, we actually start making English pronunciations on the basis of our first language, and that also creates a problem. I have also come across certain situations, whereas in one of the states, they always used to call chair as sayer, and I had a lot of difficulty because in that state, the word cha is pronounced sir. So whenever they would say something in English having a cha sound, they will use. So for example, if they have to say cheerful, they will say cheerful. And I was at a time very much embarrassed when somebody said, oh, Professor Mishra, you are very cheerful. And I retorted, oh, do I look like a cheerful? So this actually creates a problem, my dear friend. So and this is only in one country, but when you go outside, this pronunciation of yours may cause a problem. Hence, we have to be very much aware of it. Now, even when we making use of vowels, no, in our English, we find that our vowel sounds, they matter much. But the length of the vowel, that also adds to the meaning or at times to meaninglessness. But here, if we take an example from Japanese language, you will simply find that the length of the vowel, the length of the vowel will change the meaning. For example, obasan, obasan, and when this obasan, which originally means aunt, this obasan, if one more vowel is added, for example, if it is said obasan, the meaning will change and it will become grandmother. Kita will mean came, whereas if we add one more vowel sound, kita means heard. The same is true of sita and sita, my dear friends. Now, there are some other cultural practices which in many countries are considered bad, which in many countries are unapproved of, but in certain countries, you will find that these are considered good. I'm talking about bribing. Bribing is a crime in many countries, whereas in some countries, bribing is considered to be a goodwill gesture. And I have titled this as small as big. Kitu kidogo in Kenya this is considered appropriate if you, because they believe that business relationship is based on personal relationship as well. And then Huila is very common in China, Vyastika in Russia, and then Baksis in Asian countries, and Una Mordida in Mexico. Next to that, in order to maintain a sort of equilibrium between the work culture and your own culture, what we should always try to see is, and to follow is, to avoid ethnocentrism, that we do not become ethnocentric. By ethnocentrism, as I have been saying, we mean that our culture is the only one that is best throughout the world. No superiority of one's own race. That should not be. Time is money. This is actually the mantra of US, but then it is not the same in other countries. We must stop judging others by our own values, and we must also try to learn how to observe other cultures. Learning culture is a very difficult job, my dear friend, and it actually takes time. And how can we learn? Because there will be questions by many people. How can we learn a particular culture, a new culture? By adopting tolerance, by adopting empathy. We should always believe, we should always keep ourselves in the position of others, and then perhaps we'll realize that we may also have the same problem. So it is always better to avoid such stereotypical and such ethnocentric views. We must not be judgmental. We must always try to seek common ground, and we must have patience. My dear friends, patience always prevails upon everything, and somebody who maintains patience will always be rewarded, will always be paid. There are certain facts that we must remember. People in low context culture, as I have been telling, are less concerned with face, fine? But in many countries, people actually, they say face is the index of the mind, but maybe it is at times true. I'm reminded of one line by Shakespeare where he says, a man may smile and yet be a villain. So every now and then your face may not be in index of your mind, but the way you modulate your expressions, the way you modify your speech mannerism, that can actually work wonders. Mexicans, Asians, and members of other high context culture are always concerned with social harmony and saving face. Germans are direct, Americans are less direct, and Japanese are very subtle. So these things we have to remember, my dear friends. And now we have come to a point where we have to see that while we are to move beyond stereotypes, we are actually to discover individual personal qualities also. By getting hurt from one person of a community, we must not blame the entire community, because one man may err, but that does not mean this is actually the way others are also to be seen. We have to move from ethnocentrism to ethno-relativism. When we talk about ethno-relativism, we have to keep into consideration one observation which has been mentioned by Chen and Starosta in the Foundations of Intercultural Communication, where he says, Japanese visitors most often stereotype Americans as people who walk fast, are wasteful in utilizing space, speak directly, ask too many questions in the classroom, and don't respect professors, are respectful of age and status, lack of discipline, and are most of the time often extravagant. So this is actually a sort of generalized view. We must go beyond. We must move beyond ethnocentrism, and we must move towards ethno-relativism. There are at times certain misunderstandings. No? One such of them is the episode of Hewlett-Packard episode, where the French people and the Americans, they were actually to exchange in terms of emails, whereas the Americans wrote longer mails. The French people thought they were actually patronizing. At the same time, when some people from the Mazda manufacturers, they asked their American employees to wear baseball caps. Many of them thought it was flexible and that was being resented. Oh, and moreover, what is of utmost importance is to be given due consideration when you are talking, especially to a female in a different context, because at times we feel that if a person from the other gender or other sex, they smile, you start taking it in a different connotative way. And one such example is of a lady who was actually waiting at a bus stop. And suddenly it so happened that a man who was coming from the other side, the lady was actually waiting for her husband to come. And at the same time, another person having two children came there. The lady was actually reminded of her own children, and then she actually smiled at the children. The man got confused, and the man thought that the lady was smiling at her. And the man suddenly came closer and said, "Are you waiting for me? Meet me later." So the lady felt very embarrassed because the man was new to this culture, and lady felt as if she was being behaved in a very indifferent manner. My dear friends, it actually takes time to understand a new culture, but then with lot of patience and tolerance, we can understand. There are some other stages of ethno-relativism, such as denial, defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation, and integration. So since we are coming to the end of it, there are certain things that we must as individuals also practice in order to see that we do not hurt others. We have to be self-aware. We also have to follow self-respect. At the same time, we have to ensure that others are not hurt. We must interact, but while interacting, we must always give more room to others. We must maintain empathy. We must also try to practice adaptability, certainty, initiative, and acceptance. I remember that while I had started my first lecture, I had talked about one very beautiful book and movie that is Namesake. You remember that Osima, the heroine, she actually felt embarrassed in the beginning. But then as she grew with the ways of American life, she not only grew accustomed to, and like Osima, we must also mend our walls. And Osima, even though she lost her husband in US, but the son Gogol is living there, and the son is oscillating between two cultures. Now finally, when Osok is dead and Osima has got only her son left, now who should Osima cling to? Should Osima cling to her own roots? So for that, let us mend our walls and look at this small clip from that movie so that we can assimilate. It is time to have the clip of that movie, and I'm going to share it. Please have a little amount of patience, and then finally we'll close this session, but not without having a look at this movie clip. So let's wait for some time, and then I will be open to questions. Yes. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay, so should I play now? Is it audible also? Is it audible, Bharatji?
Sir, it is audible, but if you start it, then only we will come to know.
Okay, fine.
No, sir, it is not audible.
Not audible.
Yeah.
Just wait, just wait. computer for audio. It's this fine now. Mute me.
सर आपको वेबएक्स में ऑडियो वीडियो चेंज करके फिर शायद सिस्टम ऑडियो पे जाना पड़ेगा।
हाँ बताइए।
जो 3 डॉट्स दिख रहे हैं ना सर,
हाँ
वेबएक्स में 3 डॉट्स दिख रहे हैं, इसमें ऑडियो वीडियो सेटिंग है।
ऑडियो कनेक्शन। हाँ
तो उसमें ऑडियो में जो सिस्टम स्पीकर ऐसा कुछ होगा ना, सिस्टम स्पीकर आउट।
हाँ
तो उनको 2-3 को चेंज करके देख लीजिए, सिस्टम ऑडियो कर लीजिए तो शायद वो सुनाई दे जाएगा।
सिस्टम ऑडियो।
कैसे पे होंगे?
More. Here is. Just a minute. 3 dots here. More options में जाओ. Share. Please have some patience just for a few minutes. Share my, including video, share file, including video, yes. Start my video. What is this? Speaker microphone in. Change to a device, Karan.
मेरे ख्याल से जो ऑडियो है उसमें 2-3 ऑप्शन आएंगे सर, आउट में ऑडियो आउट में। तो दोनों तीनों को ट्राई करके देखेंगे तो एक चल जाएगा, कोई सिस्टम ऑडियो
आउट। ऑडियो आउट में ऑडियो।
लाइक सर जो स्पीकर है, स्पीकर में जब ड्रॉप डाउन देखेंगे हम
स्पीकर में,
हाँ टॉप पे
इसमें स्पीकर में ड्रॉप डाउन, इसमें देखो, इसमें ड्रॉप डाउन।
तो उसमें से जो भी अभी एक्टिव है उससे नहीं आ रहा तो दूसरे 2 ट्राई कर सकते हैं एक बार तो करेंगे तो हो जाएगा।
टेस्ट। It's not working, Vinay ji. Actually, this could have. Audio and video statistics.
ये बहुत लंबा नहीं हो तो आप मुझे मेल करना चाहें तो कर दीजिए, तो विल प्ले इट हियर आप चाहें तो।
मैं एक बार ट्राई कर लूँ।
या विंडो मीडिया प्लेयर में खोल लीजिए सर इसको, अभी वीएलसी में है ना सर ये।
हाँ
विंडो मीडिया में खोल लीजिए, वो विंडो के साथ कोई इंटीग्रेट करके कुछ कर दीजिए।
अच्छा, विंडो में खोलना है, विंडो में खोलिए।
Sir, in the meantime, just I want to announce one announcement for the participants.
Please announce.
Yeah. As we have fixed the quiz as 12:15, so like just because of sir want to show this video, just after the sir's lectures, we will start the quiz. So just be here and just communicate the informations to your participants. Thank you so much.
विंडोज मीडिया प्लेयर में देखो ये सब चीजें। देखो this is fine, this is fine. प्ले करो, प्ले करो ना इसको। मैं शेयर कर लेता हूँ, मैं प्ले करूँगा। Is it coming? Is it coming, Vinay ji?
Sir, voice is not coming still.
Voice is still not coming. Maybe there is something wrong. Anyway, we have to stop. But before we stop, let me say to all the participants that culture, as I said earlier, is a very dynamic process. But then man is also very dynamic. And in course of time, you will find that the more you try to observe, the more you try to learn, the more you are actually going to assimilate in the new culture. Because when two cultures meet, there is often bound to be some confusions. But then we have to remove those confusions. We have to come forward because tomorrow is ours and tomorrow never betrays. Tomorrow has always something to offer us, and we should always look forward to this new tomorrow so that we can utilize it in a better manner. With this, I come to the end of this lecture. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. And in case there are questions, I'm here. You can always raise your questions. And if it is possible, I'll try my level best to answer those questions. And in case if time has got certain limitation, you can mail your questions to me on my mail ID. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. And I also look forward to meeting you once again at some point of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time and letting us know about the communication across the culture, and in which you have all clearly mentioned the multicultural differences, and even with the beyond the geographic boundaries, we are here at one platform to learn something new from you. And what we have seen, like due to this pandemic situation, we are really dangling between the two situations, like whether we go online, whether we go the classroom teaching. But our dharma says that we have to learn techniques of the online teaching to fulfill our karma. That these lines I have taken it from your things. And actually the point is that because we have to face the different way to the students, so we should know the individual of capacity of each student, and on that basis accordingly we have to deal the online teaching techniques. So this, as you mentioned that initially that your talk is not relevant to the to this ICT tool, but I'm after listening to you, it's really relevant in this this time that we should know the all types of communication by which we can reach to our students. We should know their limitation, we should know our limitation, and then within that we have to bridging the gap and fulfill the need of today's demand. So with this word, sir, we are very thankful. I just request Dr. Amit that if there are some questions, so please raise it with the permission of sir.
Okay, sir. Sir, should I ask the question, sir? There are
yes,
so many, but probably we can have a 3-4.
Yes,
I think we can take 2 or 3 questions, and then we can post these questions to sir for further reference.
Sir, one question from Rakhi Anand, that are cross-culture communication barriers more evident in international context or intranational context? Could you cite some instances related to barrier due to difference of state and city, or even religion and religion?
Okay. Actually, this is not a question of intracultural, rather it is international. Intracultural is when you are communicating within your own country, within your own organization, within a limited sphere. But when you are communicating interculturally or cross-culturally, you are bound to come across such problems. And this, in course of time, you will realize, because there is no such potion that can help you out just in one day. Rather, let me give an example from the movie that I was trying to discuss. Asima, who came to Boston in the beginning, had all sorts of different feelings. How she actually, when a child was born in Bengali culture, there was actually a tradition that the eldest in the family will keep the name of the child. But then, as the situation was there, the letter did not come. And that is why, since the letter did not come, the child had to be named. And what name should be there? So, Asok, I mean the hero of that novel or that movie, Asok was actually saved when he was traveling by a train. And when he was saved, he was reading a book. And the book was by Gogol. And that is why, since Gogol had saved him, he said the name of the child should be Gogol. Now, this was a condition where nothing was coming in sight, and suddenly the boy was named Gogol. Later on, it became an albatross round the neck of Gogol, because Gogol was living in a new culture where he wanted to have his own name. And when the teacher in the classroom was talking about Gogol, he was reminded of that, I don't have even my own name. So he told his parents that what should be his own name. And they once again decided that they could give him another name like Nishant or whatsoever. And that is how he was oscillating between Gogol and Nishant. And so this was actually a case of identity, and this also emerged because of the cultural chaos. We need to, and towards the end, we find that when Asima has nothing to cling to, she says that I can never forget, Nikhil, I can never forget the love that these American people have given me. This country has given me a lot, and I will actually travel between two. For first half of her life will be here, and the second will be there at Kolkata. This is how she will assimilate. Like that, there's another story from Jhampa Lahiri's one of the earlier books, where where the narrator says, "I live on 3 continents. I'm a librarian in a college. My son goes to Harvard University, and my wife Mala does not drape her sari around her head." So this is how we actually, in order to be the third world citizen, we have to assimilate in order to find meaning, because finding meaning is to find authenticity, is to find accommodation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from Krishnendu Dhar, sir. Sir, you
Yes.
didn't listed India in your one of the slide where we stand in between low to high culture, keeping in mind about the accommodation. So where we stand, sir, in our culture?
We stand in and between, my dear friend.
Okay.
That will be the most moderate answer.
Okay. Another sir question, probably that is the final one, that how you can associate the technology with reference to the culture, and can we consider money is also part of the culture?
Of course, technology I consider as a binding force. Technology is a binding force, a cementing force between two cultures. Of course, how do we use technology, that is different. Now for us, those who are in India, we are using technology in a different way. You might have found that when we deliver our online lectures, many of our guys in the remotest corners of India, they switch off their video, they make their presence felt, and then they forget it. When it comes to the time of examination, then they only realize their fault. So of course, our response to a new culture will be different by different people. Of course, technology has been a binding force, but in course of time, I think your labor will really bear fruit, because this is only going to be the alternative in the days to come. And when you make something mandatory, you know, there goes a saying, bin bhai ho hi na preet. So unless and until they realize that this is the only way, they will all be agog, they will all be alive, even on their platforms called online teaching. Because my dear friends, when we talk of culture, I am reminded of again one very beautiful line where I had read, होते नहीं युद्ध यदि तोड़ी नहीं जाती सीमाएं. There could not have been wars had boundaries not been broken. These boundaries are not only physical boundaries or geographical boundaries, these are cultural boundaries also. But then we have to see that these cultural boundaries are bridged with the help of our effective communication in the age of today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, with that only another question, that can money the element of the culture or not?
Of course, money is the element of culture. But you know, my dear friends, today we are going to survive in an age where money is a denominator, but money is also a balancing factor. Think of those people who have got less money, yet they are living a good life. It is not only the question of money, it is also the question of mind. So long as mind is not gripped by money, we are able to build an India of tomorrow, which many of our forward-looking leaders say, Atmanirbhar Bharat. But then money changes fortunes, but let money not blind us. Let money not divide us. Let money not split us. Let money allow us to remain within our limits, because we belong to a country of Gandhi, who told us to live within means. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for answering the question, sir. So that's all from my side, sir. So thank you for accepting our invitation and giving sir nice presentation. Now maybe sir Saula sir maybe want to say some few words with a vote of thanks, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Bharat, some questions?
Actually, sir, there are many questions, but because of time constraint, I have limited to 3 to 4 only.
But we can, okay, then we can note down, and if sir agrees, we can mail him and then get it back.
Yes, no problem, no problem.
Thank you, sir. We gratefully thank you, sir, very much for sparing your valuable time for all of us. But we assure you that all participants are very committed to listening, and it is going to be very beneficial for them with an interaction with you, and so many new things you have told us for our own domain. Thank you very much, sir. We await for your session 2 days afterwards. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. You had already requested me last year, but I'm sorry that last year I could not fulfill your request.
Yeah.
But then finally, I have been able to, thanks to this online system. And I look forward to many such wonderful sessions in the days to come.
Definitely,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. And I also extend my heartiest thanks to all the participants who from every nook and corner of this country have been able to spare their valuable time listening to my talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Should I now leave it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you can leave.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Amit sir.
Yeah, good morning, Bharat.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir. Amit sir, can we start the quiz?
Sir, quiz means started. So probably the participants can log into the canvas and go to quiz. Quiz would be available till 1:30 for so please ensure that you submit before it. Otherwise, at 1:30 by default it will be
Closed.
okay. You will not be able to submit it afterward. So please. Okay, sir. I think if any issue is there, let us know. We can resolve. But I think most of you now they're in a canvas, so I believe there won't be an issue.
Yes, surely they will be able to. It is saying that it is not for everyone. Yes, it is not for everyone. It is the quiz only for those who have faced some problem earlier.
So already, sir, few of them have started.
So it's fine. Okay, thank you, Amit sir.
Okay, sir.
And thank you, Sabla sir. So we will
Yeah,
meet
thanks,
again
Bharat.
at
It
2
at
o'clock.
I think 1:45.
Yeah.
So be there.
Correct.
You can please announce the comeback time to all of participants.
Just there is an announcement. Like the second session will start from 2 o'clock. So we request all the participants to again assemble at 1:45 p.m. today and for the next session, next two sessions. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think few of them are asking that not opening the link. I am not sure. Maybe means just check it out. Log out from your canvas and again do it because I can see that means so many participants have already started. I don't think so. There should be any issue.